Wow, shocking news came out suggesting that Gervonta did request from the WBA to mandate a rehydration clause against Frank Martin. According to Chris Mannix, the WBA are indeed mandating a 12 pounds rehydration clause for the Gervonta versus Frank Martin fight on June 15th, the WBA president Gervonta has confirmed. However, they are not doing so for their other WBA world title fights at the present, which means if this new rule by the WBA only applies to Gervonta, clearly Gervonta had to be the one that requested it. It makes zero sense that Crawford doesn't have to do the same even though he's fighting for the WBA title. It makes zero sense that nobody in the sport of boxing who is fighting for the WBA title, from Canelo, Pitbull Cruz, Crawford, so on and so forth, are not following this new rule by the WBA, except of Gervonta. Where there's smoke, there's clearly fire. Now this means either two things. Gervonta did this through the WBA in order to avoid the backlash by the media and the fans. Since Tank is such the A side over Frank, he could have had easily forced Frank Martin to do the rehydration clause anyways. But he would have had caught a lot of backlash from the media and the fans because he's doing it to a lightweight, a fighter who's fighting in his own division. That's a terrible look for Tank. So to avoid the backlash by the fans and the media, what better way than to blame the WBA for it? Have the WBA take all of the blame. After all, they're getting paid a whole lot of money, a huge fee for their services by Tank. Now that's possibility number one. Possibility number two is when Gervonta saw Frank Martin in person during the press conference, he noticed how big he was. He could have easily got worried about Frank Martin's size, despite the things he was saying on stage. Now, what can Tank do about that? Is obviously put a rehydration clause in place, but he can't do that because the contract's already signed. So the best way to go about it is make the WBA force Frank Martin to do the rehydration clause. That way Tank hands are clean, whatever it is. According to this report by Chris Mannix, clearly it had been Tank team who requested the WBA to force Frank Martin to do the rehydration clause, since nobody that's fighting for the WBA title is following this new rule that magically popped out of nowhere. Only for Gervonta and Frank Martin. Nobody else. The math is not math and the math is not adding up. Now Tank either made this request to the WBA before they signed the contract or after. Either way, Tank team had to been involved in this. Even Gervonta's reaction to the news was strange because he was like, I don't even know what's going on. Like, really? You about to get in the ring with Frank, but you don't know there's a rehydration clause in place? That doesn't even make sense. Matter of fact, when Tank was talking about a rematch with Ryan Garcia at 140 pounds, Tank agreed to move up to 140. However, he mentioned a rehydration clause for 12 pounds, which is ironically the same amount of pounds he has for the Frank Martin fight. What a coincidence. Check it out.
You and Ryan Garcia rematch at 143 could be massive, maybe biggest fights. And what do you think?
But not 143. Why 143? Probably 140. That's a
Okay.
That's a weight class. That's a weight class
championship.
other than from
Okay.
135. That's the weight class that he fight at. So let's do 133. 140, and he can hydrate back up to
Whatever he wants, or
not that. The most 52 or something like that. 135, brother.
Listen, this is a bad look on Tank, regardless how you put it. If supposedly the WBA came out with this new rule, then this new rule should be applied to everybody. Not just to Gervonta, but to every single champion that's fighting for the WBA title, just like the IBF. You cannot pick and choose. What's the point of that? Especially when Tank and Frank fight in the same division. Obviously, Frank Martin, he has more muscle mass than Gervonta. So it's going to be harder for him to make the weight. So to make the fight on an even playing field, you got to allow Frank Martin to rehydrate correctly. Because if Tank is having an easier time to make the weight, that's going to be an advantage on Tank's side, being healthier on fight night. So guess what? If Frank was a little bit bigger than Tank on fight night, it doesn't matter because Frank had to struggle more to make the weight. Frank Martin is obviously going to have to drain himself more to make the weight, while Gervonta doesn't. Therefore, the fight is going to be on an even playing field on fight night. Frank Martin is going to have a little weight advantage, but Gervonta Davis is going to be way healthier. This is why people have different body types. However, when you put this rehydration clause in there, obviously Frank Martin is going to get affected, but not Tank. Which this is why this makes zero sense. It ain't like Gervonta is fighting someone at 140 pounds. Absolutely not. He's fighting a lightweight in Frank Martin who fights at 135 just like him. That's why when Gervonta said, "You guys think I have the power to tell the WBA what to do?" Well, clearly Gervonta does because he did it before. When the WBA came out stating that they're going to force Gervonta to fight Devin Haney when Devin was undisputed by ordering the fight, Tank came out completely dismissing what the WBA president Gervonta said and disobeyed what the WBA ordered him to do or tried to order him to do. He even threatened the WBA by letting them know if they do that, then he's going to leave the rankings altogether. So clearly Gervonta has the power to make something shake. When Tank refused to follow the WBA rules and broke them, do you think the WBA stripped Gervonta of his WBA title, the regular mandatory title he had? Absolutely not. He kept it till this day. Then they upgraded him after Devin Haney vacated to the full champion status. This was not the first nor the last time Tank broke the rules. Even before that, I told you guys when Tank was at 130 pounds, he ended up fighting for the regular WBA title after he was stripped of his IBF title. However, some way, somehow, he ended up getting the Super WBA title at 130 without fighting the Super WBA champion. Some way, somehow, the Super WBA champion ended up being the regular champion. This is why when Tank said, "You guys telling me I have the power to tell the section and body what to do," this was not a good point, since Gervonta claims he's the face of boxing. Well, the former face of boxing, Canelo Alvarez, always tells the section and bodies what to do. Remember, he told the WBC to create a new belt, the franchise trophy, the NBF belt, all because he didn't want to fight his mandatory. Canelo has been avoiding David Benavidez for the past 3 years, and they haven't ordered him to fight David Benavidez. Clearly, Canelo has the power to tell the section and bodies what to do. We know that for a fact because of the franchise situation with Jamal Charlo. We know that for a fact because of the David Benavidez and the David Morrell situation at 168 right now. Neither one of them could get the section and body to mandate the Canelo fight. And if Gervonta is going to claim he's the face of boxing over Canelo, then he's going to have some influence because money talk, bullshit walk. And if we are going by Gervonta's own track record, he already told the WBA what to do before when they tried to mandate him to fight Devin Haney. He refused to follow the rules and he kept his belt. With that being said, go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe below. And to be continued on the next episode of Akhi TV. Peace out. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Did you see EJ tweet last night when he was like, "You just talk too much," and then Tank was like, he said something. He was like, "I talk because I can back it up." Basically, they was going back and forth on Twitter.
Yeah, I seen it.
Hey, real thoughts on that?
Oh, wait.
You say he talked. I mean, he said you wanted to talk, and you say he do the tweeting.
He say he don't talk. Wasn't he talking a lot today? That motherfucker was talking a whole lot today. He did a whole lot of out of character shit today, didn't he? Stood up, came over. Come on, something different. I'm making you do something different. Shit.